If fate can do it, then so can I. Dai-chan here. I hope you'll welcome me for the occasional video. Welcome back to OtakuDaiChan. As you can see, I've taken on a female form for today's video, which is fitting for today's discussion on how anime and its fandom explore matters of gender. I'd like to think you all have come to know me as relatively level-headed and inclusive, at least as far as one can be, while trying to protect anime's creative liberties. Furthermore, this is not the first time I've talked about gender on this channel. One video I'm especially proud of is exploring gender in the Fate series, where we look at a handful of servants and try to better understand who they are and how they identify in an attempt to clear up some common misconceptions. In that video, I made it clear that what ultimately matters is how the individual identifies, and if they don't openly declare their gender, it's not worth starting flame wars over how they're addressed by the fandom. After all, in cases like Mordred and Astolfo, things can get complicated, and just because someone behaves according to one gender, that doesn't mean that's explicitly how they identify. This was the core issue of an older video, in which I reiterate how Naoto from Persona 4 is not transgender, but that in no way should deter anyone who is transgender from enjoying her character. The way she's written, Naoto is a woman who explores and even considers sexual reassignment surgery so that she can better fit society's image of a renowned detective. Over the course of the game, however, she decides to forego society's standards, acknowledging she doesn't have to cast aside or villainize her femininity for the sake of her career. She once again embraces her femininity, albeit slowly, which apparently upsets some trans people who would prefer she go all the way and identify as male. They heinously criticized her arc as transphobic, which I find completely misses the point of her narrative. For its time, and even still today, it's rare for a video game to bring us a main character who questions their gender while still remaining a fan favorite. Even if she doesn't identify as trans, she still sincerely confronts societal standards of gender expression and decides for herself how she wants to present as. That sentiment is obviously a boon for anyone hoping to be accepted as trans. Now, I wouldn't want to mislead you all who watched my Sailor Moon April Fool's video. In it, I mocked the idea of Sailor Jupiter being trans, but not to insult anyone's headcanon. In canon, she's just a tomboy, but if people want to imagine her as trans, then that's fine. What I can't stand, though, is when people take that as their headcanon and then get hostile with other fans for not following along with it. Basically, your headcanon isn't there for virtue signaling. Lastly, one of my personal favorite videos, redefining the aesthetics of cool in anime, serves as a confession and exploration as to why I tend to prefer playing as female characters in all my video games. Much like the avatar you can see now, a bit of feminine sex appeal can feel empowering. Personally, I see it as inherently awesome, much the same way that people find capes and jetpacks awesome. There's nothing political about it, just pure artistic fun. And I honestly doubt I'm alone in these sentiments. There's something about anime as an art style that simply appeals to many different people, all of whom have different ideas about gender and expression. Whether intended to or not, anime is surprisingly welcoming to such fans, and I want to talk about the various reasons why. Now, I've already hinted at the first reason, which is roleplay. All fictional media, including anime, encourage us to step into another person's shoes, to see the world from their perspective. We get access to their thoughts, and in video games, we're even allowed to influence those thoughts. This creates a parasocial bond with another person that can be as deep or as shallow as we want it to be. I think that the character Samus Aran from Metroid is a brilliant example of this. On the surface, Samus's Varia suit is completely gender neutral, and yet the game gives us glimpses of Samus that undeniably confirm she's a woman, whether it be through reflections in her visor, her death animations, or the moments when she fully removes her suit. Players can take this information and do whatever they want with it. Some don't care what gender she is. She's a video game character they use to blast space aliens. And that doesn't change even if she were an Italian plumber, a perky belly dancer, or a sentient blob of meat. Some players just prefer the presence of an attractive woman on screen, but form no real bond otherwise, and that's perfectly fine too. For other players, however, Samus's gender can be profound and inspiring. It's exciting to know that a woman is doing all this badass stuff, zipping around the universe hunting space pirates and confronting the trauma of her past. It's empowering to see her off-duty, hanging around alien planets with confidence and comfort, after braving depths such as Brinstar. For me, it's a chance to experience femininity, even if only in a small capacity. There's an extent to which people find that creepy, like they're reluctant to dare bend their horizons. But when you consider that none of us have ever used a weaponized spacesuit to fight robotic dinosaurs on uncharted planets, having a pair of breasts or role-playing as a woman isn't that unbelievable or extreme. The same goes for games that let us create our own avatars. I know Sword Art Online jokes about a guy in episode 1 who's playing as a chick but gets exposed when Kayaba announces the death game. But the idea by itself isn't at all wrong. In the anime, Recovery of an MMO Junkie, our two protagonists, Moriko and Yuta, play an MMO using characters of the opposite gender, Hayashi and Lily, respectively. It's actually quite relieving to see a woman playing as a man because it helps tear down the mentality that genderbent roleplay is inherently creepy. Seriously, if I'm gonna play Code Vein, a game in which I have vampiric powers and can fight against horrific monsters with a gargantuan sword, it's not that much of a stretch to fantasize doing it as whichever gender I prefer. Another reason anime is appealing to those wanting to explore gender is androgyny. While there are certainly hyper-masculine dudes like in Dragon Ball Z or exaggerated females like in One Piece, a huge array of anime characters share a middle ground in how they're rendered both visually and audibly. Two of the most iconic anime protagonists, Edward Elric and Kenshin Himura, are voiced by women in Japanese. I remember watching Final Fantasy Advent Children with my mom once, and my dad took one look at Cloud and said, "You look like a girl." Quite an astute observation, considering Cloud absolutely nails his cross-dressing.
Nailed it, I know, thank you. Moving on.
Even so, Advent Children Cloud was modeled after the J-pop star Gact, who happens to be male. Some men, including the Japanese, have a genetic tendency to grow less facial hair and body hair than, say, Europeans. Given that, the vast majority of anime characters have absolutely no facial or body hair at all. That alone helps most anime men and women look alike, unless an artist goes out of their way to exaggerate a particular feature. This is extremely appealing to people exploring different forms of gender expression, which is why you'll see a strong LGBTQ presence at anime cons. It's not uncommon to look at a con schedule and see a panel on how to bind breasts and such. Of course, we can't forget about traps. I'm not here to lecture whether you find traps to be a slur or not, but I am up to argue that the existence of traps does way more help than harm to gender equality and diversity. One of the things plaguing trans rights and acceptance is deep-seated homophobia, repulsion to the mere thought of being attracted to the same sex. While I definitely respect people's sexuality, hetero or otherwise, I feel like it's important to distinguish sexual and gender preferences from each other. It's possible to be attracted to a person's masculine or feminine traits, regardless of their genitalia. Even if someone draws the line at biology, the idea of seeing feminine men or masculine women can help break down heavy gender expectations that cause people to retaliate when they discover what they thought was a man or a woman actually wasn't. Now, Astolfo is a brilliant example. I may not be into guys, but I do like his feminine charm. He has more of what I look for in a woman than some actual women. The same goes for the characters Dori and Gura from Utawarerumono. Anyone who plays the visual novel will get clarification that these twins are certainly dudes, but I can't recall the anime ever specifying this. Since I watched the anime first, I definitely thought that they were cute androgynous women, and I quite liked them. Now that I know the truth, I still like them just as much as before. I'm not afraid of what that says about my sexuality. They're still cute, even if I no longer fantasize about them. That mentality inherently makes me less bothered by male sexuality, because my interpretation of what that looks like is no longer so rigid. Rigid male sexuality. Anyway, anime has made the idea that you can't judge someone's gender by their immediate appearance quite common, which I think helps us judge each other as people before judging them as male or female. Isn't that what's most important in the end? Viewing us as people instead of a list of tags or labels. Now, the strange thing is that Japan is mostly a very patriarchal, heterosexual society. While the youth are certainly more accepting of LGBTQ presence, there are definitely those that frown upon people being gay or transgender, at least out in public. There are definitely anime that reinforce this conservatism as well, but I feel like the anime art style practically subverts that mentality. Everyone just looks too damn youthful and attractive to hate. After all, there are anime specifically catered to exploring gender expression or dysphoria, such as The Wandering Sun, which is about a 5th grader who wants to embrace identifying as a girl. Such anime are deep and emotional while countering long-held expectations. Spoilers for the Grisaya series, but the protagonist Yuji Kazumi, despite being a confident, trained assassin and quite macho for a Japanese student, has a backstory of vulnerability. As a child, he suffered abuse and neglect from his parents. He was taken in by a creepy dude who dressed him up like his sister and molested him. After getting out of that hellhole, he learned most of his survival training from skilled female role models, who also slept with him on occasion. While he's neither gay nor trans, he's had to define himself after a childhood of mixed signals, which makes us realize not to judge him or anyone else in the series at face value. Then, we've got good old-fashioned gender bending. This comes in a variety of forms, including cosplay. Fans have certainly been known to cross-dress as their favorite characters, assuming they don't already identify with the character's gender. On the flip side, characters that are one gender can be reimagined or interpreted to fit another. This allows fans to enjoy a character for who they are, regardless of gender, in a way that's comfortable and familiar. A lot of shows and franchises also gender bend in-universe. Take Ranma 1/2, for example. It's about a guy who dips into a magical hot spring and becomes cursed to turn into a girl whenever he's hit with cold water. While it's a very comedic anime, it also has its protagonist having to learn what it's like to be a girl. Obviously, you all know that the Fate franchise is notorious for this. Not only is the poster girl for the entire series a gender-bent King Arthur, but thanks to Fate Grand Order and Prototype, we've got gender variations of many historical figures, such as Merlin, Musashi, and even Paul Bunyan. Clearly, the trend is to turn men into women for the sake of inventing more waifu, but the concept is still valid. The story is also written in such a way that the same relationships build whether you choose to play as a female or male, including romantic ones. Nero doesn't care whether you're Hakuno or Hakunon, for instance. To sum it all up, considering that much of Japan is indeed patriarchal and heterosexual, anime has a surprising amount of works that subvert our typical gender norms. Entire genres exist to cater to different sexualities, and the art style itself lends a kind of androgyny that comforts and inspires people with alternative sexualities and identities. The great part is, none of it's preachy either. For fans, it can remain completely irrelevant or cosmetic, or it can serve as an aesthetically welcoming place for exploring gender expression. Because of this, I think anime encourages fans of all kinds to understand and relate to one another. With that said, I hope you all can find merit in this new design of mine. I'll admit it's a tad embarrassing to reveal, but don't worry, it's not at all a permanent change. Just anticipate me popping up every now and again. Of course, this is a discussion video, so I want to hear from all of you about how anime has influenced your understanding of gender. That, or can you list other examples of anime that challenge gender? Do you ever intentionally play as a character of another gender? Why? There's lots I look forward to reading in the comments below.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiChan, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click Join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.